Habs finally beat the Bruins in regulation. They do it in convincing style. The Columbus Blue Jackets lose. The Canadiens keep pace in the Eastern Conference playoff race, and it's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Canadiens.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 1281, a number that we're going to be talking about very soon on this program. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. Thank you for tuning into Locked On Canadiens and for making us your first listen of the day, and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports the show and ensures you do not miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. What is there to say after a game like that? The Canadiens finally defeat the Boston Bruins in regulation. It was their first time since 2019 beating the Boston Bruins in regulation. They've done it a couple times in overtime since then. That was the one. They do it in convincing fashion, a 4-1 game that the Bruins were never really in. They left the first period scoreless, but outside of that, I mean, even in that period, Montreal had better looks than Boston did. The Bruins have lost 9 straight games now. Kind of eulogized them in the last episode a little bit, but now, I mean, just seeing it with your own eyes, it's very clear that team is toast. And there's not much coming in the way of prospects in Boston. They're going to have to rebuild on the fly a little bit here because they have a guy named David Pastrnak who should probably be, trying to win a Stanley Cup before his career is over. But we'll start there, and then we have to head into our mailbag. Lots of fun questions this week, as always. Always taking questions on the second line center or future of one in Montreal. And we're always looking to get some fun questions. Like we get a question later on about whether or not if you lose your stick, you should get a new one or just try to stay on the ice, stay in the play. I think it's a fascinating question. So we'll get to all that. Let's start with the game in Montreal Thursday night. Bell Center was rocking and for a reason, right? They know it's at stake. They know the team they're playing. They know how much it matters. And they left it all out there. I thought they played as near a perfect game as we've seen this team play. The score should have been a little bit more lopsided in the Canadiens' favor, I think. As somebody who drafted Jeremy Swayman in fantasy hockey this year, I have to ask, where's that been all season, Sway? Because I certainly didn't get any of it this year. You can thank me for that, Canadiens fans. That's probably why he was bad. I also drafted Austin Matthews, who was a pretty, took a big step backwards this year. So fantasy hex from Maybe It's Ian. Maybe that's just how that rolls. But the big story here for me is one that we've been on for a few days now, a few games now, a few weeks now, really a few months now at this point. Nick Suzuki, another fantastic effort from the captain leading the way. That line was dominant. They only had the one goal, but they chewed Boston up. They took their lunch money all night, which is just like, it's therapeutic to see that finally happen. It just hasn't happened in so long. And even when, the Canadiens were better, they didn't have a line that just dominated them like this one did. There was the one play where Carrier just was completely robbed by Swayman, which was when the first line was out there dominating. And he just put it in the one spot where Swayman could get his glove and probably save of the year, honestly, in my opinion, from Jeremy Swayman. But Nick Suzuki, the story here, he hits 80 points on the assist to Cole Caulfield, and in really just spectacular fashion. He recognizes it's a 2-on-1. He completely dances the defender back with a toe drag, gets it over to Cole Caulfield, who has an empty net to place goal number 35. He's the first Montreal Canadiens to score 35 since Max Pacioretty, and Suzuki becomes the first Montreal Canadien to hit 80 points since Alex Kovalev in 2008. He had 84, which means with the empty net goal that Nick Suzuki picked up at the end, he is only 3 points away from tying Alex Kovalev's high in Montreal, and he's 4 points away from essentially making a new record for the Canadiens in the 21st century. There hasn't been a Canadian as good as him since, I believe it was Domfus and Turgeon each had a plus, and I think both of them were over 90 points back in the late 90s. So he just keeps cooking. And I think Canadiens fans need to get comfortable with the fact that he's never going to get the league recognition until I thought Andrew Berkshire put this really well on Game Over, in that until he gets into the playoffs and goes on another deep run, he's just not going to get that. And that might be this year. I mean, maybe him just getting in and making some noise would be enough for people to recognize that this guy's legit. But I cannot tell you how little it matters to that guy. I mean, he knows how good he is. He knows how impactful he is to this team. It does not matter to him that, people are saying he's not a number one center. He is obviously that to the people who watch the games. I mean, I think I was on this back when, Nick Kypreos kind of went off about him not being a number one center. And I think Andrew Berkshire mentioned it on Game Over as well, that you don't have to take the opinions of these people seriously because you know for sure they're not watching the games. If you watch the Montreal Canadiens regularly, you know how great Nick Suzuki is. We don't need to, we can't litigate this every single time we need to. I do want to pull up our handy dandy Mike meter, because I thought Mike Matheson was spectacular in this one. I'm going to give him a 3.75, closer to 4 on the magic or tragic meter. I know I early on, it was very clear he was going to have a good night. He was moving well, playing well offensively. I think it was his first shift. Gallagher got him a partial breakaway, which, if a defenseman is getting a partial breakaway, he's feeling it. And I started talking with some fans, because I mentioned that he had been really on one that on Thursday night, and people mentioned, except for that breakaway he gave up. And it's like, I understand that, but I find it's really unfair that with this player, we can't enjoy the positive without mentioning the negative. We can't, it's not possible for us to be like, he was great. We have to also say he made a bunch of mistakes, but he outplayed them. Or he made one mistake, but he outplayed it. I think that's just cosmically unfair to this player. And I find that that's why I wanted to do this meter, this bit, is to remind people that he is really, really good. And it's just, I find it unfair, the standard that he's held to. Again, I think he's a perfect number 3 defenseman, second pairing guy. In Montreal, he has to be more than that. And that's less his fault than it is the way the Canadiens are constructed. It won't be that way forever, but that's just kind of how it is. Great game from Mike Matheson. I thought he was fantastic. I thought that, and I don't know if they ever gave him an assist on the Dvorak goal that started the game, but I thought he should have gotten one because he took a shot from the point that bounced around in the slot, and Gallagher got it to Dvorak for the game opening goal. I thought Matheson probably earned an assist on that one, but sometimes the way they hand those assists out is just a little busted. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. Other things to mention in this game. One thing I was tracking after the second period was the fact that David Pastrnak didn't have any points. And I was thinking, man, that hasn't happened in a while. And I was right. It hadn't happened since March 2022. And right as I was thinking that, and I found the research and I found the stat on it, he gets an assist on the Elias Lindholm goal. So we couldn't go with that. I'm glad I didn't say anything because y'all would have blamed me for it, even though I had nothing to do with it. It just goes to show how dominant that player is against Montreal, and how I think it's wild that the Bruins are about to waste that player because they don't look like they're anywhere close to being competitive again. I found that their attention to detail was shockingly bad in a way that is, for any other team, if I saw, even a good team or a team that's been great for a long time, like, I don't know, if Dallas had a game like that, it'd be like, yeah, whatever, it's Dallas. Boston just has generationally been so good and so defensively sound that it was legitimately concerning. Like, if I was a Bruins fan, I'd be like, what happened? It's like the Monstars just sucked all the power out of them. I don't understand what happened to that franchise. Just so quickly, they went from a really, really good team to cannot play the puck. I mentioned it on Thursday's episode of the show. If you're an everydayer, you heard this when I was covering the preview for the Bruins game. The Bruins have the second most turnovers at 5-on-5 in the National Hockey League. They definitely boosted that total against the Montreal Canadiens. It was not a great game from Boston. But look, Canadiens were great. Montembeault was fantastic when he needed to be. They very much did not give him a ton to work with. I think they go back to Montembeault on Saturday for Philadelphia, and then a team that cannot score in the Nashville Predators. I think they're the worst offense in the league. You can probably safely give them to Jakub Dobiš, knowing how this team is playing in front of them. So with that, we'll step aside from the game. A fantastic game for the Montreal Canadiens. They keep pace with the Rangers. They step above they put some more distance between themselves and the Columbus Blue Jackets, who lost to Colorado in pretty dramatic fashion on Thursday night. Things are good. They're in the mix. They control their own destiny to the playoffs at this point with the 2-point gap between them and the Rangers. And now with even games played, they are going to be in the driver's seat the rest of the way, as long as they keep their foot on the gas. It's a really exciting time to be a Montreal Canadiens fan. Stick with us at Locked On Canadiens. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be covering them until the very end, and then even after that. All right. It's Friday. That means it's our mailbag day. We'll step into your questions right after this. Daylight savings time snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, or squeezing it around a golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up when you need it. I've been staying up late watching the baseball season starting, the NHL playoff races unfold, doing this show, and 5 Hour Energy helps me keep up the next day. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They are everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. All right, mailbag time. You guys always pull out all the stops when you're sending in questions, although I had to move one to the front of the line because she is the other half of this show in Laura Saba at the Active Stick. Does anyone miss me, or shall I stay on vacation? Laura, everyone misses you. Please come back soon. I miss you because this has been a lot of work. I won't lie to you, my friend. It's a labor of love sometimes, but we do miss you. We do need you to come back and tell us how handsome these players are, because as Boondoggle points out, there's a huge gap in coverage in that right now. I am less so reminding folks of how handsome Josh Anderson is, even though he should. We should mention how handsome he is, but I don't. That is Laura's shtick. If Laura came on here and started talking about expected goals, y'all would be like, "That's Ian's thing. What's going on?" So we stay in our lane here at Locked On Canadiens whenever possible. Laura, please come back sometime soon. All right, our friend Kay of Game Over fame. Question 1: I know we're not in off-season mode, shockingly, but with the context that the Habs will be looking to make big moves in the summer, primarily for a 2C, maybe inquiring about a right-handed defenseman rather. What's your bold prediction, or just prediction, for a big-name prospect who gets moved in the deal? And last week, I missed a question from Boondoggle, very similar question. Apologies, Boondoggle. In order to trade for a 2C with term and a right D to bolster that side, the Habs will have to make tough decisions on prospects. How many untouchables can the Habs realistically have? I would want to keep Demidov, Reinbacher, Fowler, and Hage. If we're talking about prospects who are untouchables, you're probably pretty close there. I don't know at this point how untouchable Michael Hage is. I would very desperately not want to move him if I were Kent Hughes in the Montreal Canadiens. But if it's bringing in a legit, star player back the other way, and the Canadiens feel this is it, this is go time, we need to start making moves for a Stanley Cup now, you might be able to convince me to move Michael Hage for the right player. That would really suck, though. I'll tell you that much. Like that would hurt a lot, because we saw how much it meant to him and his family to be drafted by this team. To trade him before he even really gets to wear the sweater at any point would be kind of, cosmically unfair. So I would, he's not untouchable, but he is as close to untouchable as you can get without being in that spot. I don't know who they would be looking at, as far as top ranked prospects or highly rated prospects that they would be comfortable moving. I think that maybe Logan Mailloux would be a guy that they'd be looking at trying to not move on from, but that's a valuable player and a player with a skill set that's difficult to find, but a player with deficiencies that he's still trying to work on. And you might be able to sell another team on the skill set that player has. I kind of don't know what his value would be outside of the Canadiens. I would say, like, in a trade this summer, I wouldn't be surprised to see them move on from Joshua Waugh. Not that they're giving up on the player, but just that maybe it's starting to look like he just needs he needs a change of scenery. Like, it's not so much I'm trying to run the guy out of town, but it's more so I don't think that his future long term, if he wants to be a top 6 forward, is on this team. I do think that he's probably more of an energy line, third line player on this team. And maybe that's what he amounts to in the NHL, over the course of his career, but I just don't see it happening in Montreal right now. Players have passed him on the depth chart. The fact that we're talking about Oliver Kapanen coming over from playing in Finland, or in Sweden rather, to come over here and take essentially his spot in the lineup and send him back to Laval kind of tells you all you need to know about the player's current status with the Montreal Canadiens, right? Like they're taking a guy that they had to send to Europe because he couldn't hack it in the NHL at the beginning of the year. And now he's come back after a really productive season with Timra, and he is essentially poised to take your spot in the lineup. It's tough to imagine that he's going to take that particularly well, and maybe it's time to move on. Kay's second question was, do you like me? Yes, Kay. As my wife brought me a piece of paper that said, do you like me, with yes and no? And I checked yes, and we posted that on Bluesky. So the answer there is yes. Let's go to Robert Rice with a fun one here. You've been called for a penalty in a hockey game. Which of these 4 standard responses as the offending player is your go-to? The disbelief/confused look as you go, who me, preposterous. The outraged response of, how dare you call me for an obvious penalty. The argumentative approach of, well, actually, sir, if you allow me to explain why smashing that guy in the face with my stick is within the rules. And the resigned look of, yeah, I guess I did do that. For me, I'm not an argumentative guy, I don't think. So it's probably 4. It's probably the resigned look of, yeah, I guess I did do that. I'd probably, in the heat of the moment, not know that. I forget what player it was, but he got called for a penalty like that. And he's arguing it the whole way. And then he goes into the penalty box and he looks up at the Jumbotron and he sees the play and he goes, oh yeah, I did exactly what you said I did. Yeah, sorry about that. That feels like more my character in response to a penalty being called on me from the referees. A second one here from Boondoggle, just because I think it's quick and a little funny. Since a capital I looks like a lowercase L, has anyone ever called you land by mistake? Yes, I have gotten land before. I've also gotten Jan. Someone wrote YAN once, and I didn't understand that one. I've gotten Ivan before. I don't know where that came from exactly either. I think, and getting all of those has led me to the name that I am known by on the internet, which is maybe it's Ian, because it might be Jan, it might be Lan, it might be Ivan. Who knows? It's for me, I just get a lot of these different different names, and with a last name like Boisvert in the United States, I get every variation of that as well. So, I might be Ivan Boisvert one day. I might be Jan, Boisvert another day. There's just a lot of different ways that people can goof up my name. All right, enough talking about my name. When we come back, we'll talk about some more names, some ideas of guys to come in and play on the second line center next year, and a philosophical question, in my opinion, of whether or not you should leave the ice to go get a new stick, or if you should stay in the play and try to stop whatever is happening. And we'll get into that in just a moment. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets on your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories to whoever's cutting down the nets at the end of the tournament. If you've got your eye on a few underdogs this year, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening every day and the women's Final Four just getting kicked off, there's always something exciting to bet on. And if you miss opening tip-off, get in on some live bets as you watch the action unfold. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, fourth line shift time. Speaking of fourth line shifts, I want to mention in that Boston game on Thursday, Michael Pezzetta was not taking a regular shift about midway through the second period. Alex Newhook was getting a lot of shifts on that line, which says two things to me. One, Marty really likes what Alex Newhook is bringing right now, and I have to agree with him there. Alex Newhook is absolutely bringing the kind of game that the Montreal Canadiens need at this point in the season. And he's still not 100% there on Michael Pezzetta, which is interesting because I thought, especially the last game against Florida and this one against Boston, I thought Pezzetta's played okay. I haven't had an issue with what Michael Pezzetta's been doing, since he got put back into the lineup. I just don't think that he brings the kind of play and responsibility that the Montreal Canadiens want throughout their lineup, which is why I think they're going to give Kapanen a chance over the next couple games to see if he can bring that for the Montreal Canadiens, because they're going to need more going down the stretch. That fourth line is having a hard time. And I almost wonder, keeping it on the fourth line, and then we'll get back into our mailbag here. I almost wonder if you don't want to take Pezzetta, or you don't want to take Pezzetta out, and instead you want to take Armia out and let him rest for a few games. His injury is noticeable. He's having a really hard time playing to the same level that we are used to seeing from him, and it's a testament to how much he's improved his game that we're looking at him and we know he's injured and we're going, yeah, that's the injury that's doing that. That's not a regression to what he used to be. That's just, we know that he's banged up. So I almost wonder if there's a chance that maybe they go, Armia, you can sit this one out. We'll get Kapanen in there. This weekend would be a great opportunity to try it with a back-to-back. Maybe you get Kapanen into one of those games in Armia's place, but I would imagine that Kapanen gets in there sooner rather than later for the Montreal Canadiens. All right, let's get back to our mailbag. Teasing this question since the beginning because I find it to be very fascinating. Danny Joe 22, to get the stick or go to the bench. I'm always a bit bemused when players lose the stick and carry on trying to defend. Almost every time I think they would be better retrieving the stick or going to the bench when it breaks. What do you think? This is situational to me but most of the time, Danny, I agree with you. I think that you are way more effective with a stick than not. And that shouldn't be controversial, but it seems like at times it is. Now, if you break your stick and your man, the guy that you're covering, has the puck, you cannot go get a new one. Like, you have to try to play that play. The second the puck moves to another side of the ice, especially if it is the first or third period where the bench is closer to your zone, you got to go get a new stick and get back into the play as fast as you can, or change. Just sprint off the ice, have the other guy jump on, and maybe catch them off guard. Maybe your guys down low have recovered the puck, and maybe they've got a breakaway now going the other way because you went and created that with your stick. But you are far more useful with your hockey stick than not. And I don't know why that is a lot of times so controversial. It's very much also when teams have a power play, they're on the power play, and the opposition takes another penalty. And instead of giving them the puck as soon as possible to get as long of a 5-on-3 as you can, they'd rather try to play 6-on-4 in that moment, which is just like, I feel that you're far less likely to score on a 6-on-4 that you've created like randomly than, a 5-on-3 that you can kind of draw a play and get set up. It's very similar to me in that I feel like you were just better off giving them the puck. There was a big example of that earlier, a few weeks ago now. The Buffalo Sabres were in Utah. They were either on a power play or the net was already empty because they were down and they were trailing at the end of the game, but there was a delayed penalty. And the color commentator, Rob Ray, is yelling, give them the puck, give them the puck. You'll get a power play if you just give it to them. And instead, the Sabres tried to make a pass back to the blue line. It went off the boards and went into their own net. And Rob Ray, like after the horn is going off in Utah, and he's so angry, just going, give him the puck. Like he cannot believe what he watched. That's the same thing to me as like not going to the stick because you need to stay in the play. Like, no, use your head. Like play the law of averages here. You're better with your stick. You're better on a 5-on-3 than you are on a 6-on-4. A lot of times in the moment, they don't make that decision. And it's not like these teams have policies on what they should do in that moment. It's not your workplace where you have like an SOP that tells you if your stick breaks, you have to go do this. No, they have to make that decision on the fly. And a lot of times they think it's a safer, smarter play to stay in the zone and try to defend. All right, Brady Piercy, who are your realistic targets for the Habs to see this summer? Since Laura's not here, I'll say Crosby just because it's funny and we need to keep that bit alive. So, Laura, Crosby's for you. For me, I think I'm really interested in the idea of Matt Barzal in Montreal. I don't know what the Islanders are doing. It seems like they're cooked this year. Not sure, if the coach is coming back. Not sure if the GM is coming back. Not sure what that team thinks they are. They sold at the deadline and then still tried to make a push. I don't know what they're trying to be. And I feel like Lou doesn't make great trades in situations like this. So if Lou is still around and he decides he wants to try to rebuild this hockey team, Matt Barzal is a guy I would call about. Now he's been hurt. He has injury problems. That's well documented. But that's a star player in this league who's been stunted on a roster and in a system that just does not value offensive players. The fact that the Islanders traded away Brock Nelson because they didn't want to sign him and decided they were still going to try to make the playoffs should kind of tell you everything you need to know about how they value goal scoring, because they don't put a lot of stock into it. Clearly, it's just not something that they care about all that much. So Matt Barzal is one for me. The rest, we kind of have to wait and see how the rest of the season shakes out, because there's not, like, on a lot of the bottom feeder teams that haven't figured out, they're not selling any of those big line players anymore. Like Chicago doesn't have one of those guys. San Jose doesn't have one of those guys. We have to kind of wait and see what happens with the teams who are on the bubble or the teams who are, legitimate playoff teams and legitimate cup contenders, and maybe they disappoint and we start to see, okay, maybe there's some feelings that they might need to tear those teams down. Looking around the league at teams like that, maybe Vancouver decides to start tearing things down, but like, I don't think you're going after Patterson. I don't think that that's in play. Maybe there's a deal to be made in Calgary for Nazem Kadri. I think he'd be great in Montreal. But I don't know that the Flames are trying to move on from that player. It would also be very funny for Nazem Kadri to become a Montreal Canadien, because the Flames were only able to sign him because Kent Hughes took Sean Monahan. If you remember, like, they were certain that that signing was going to happen, but the Flames didn't have any cap space. So they had to send Sean Monahan in a first to the Montreal Canadiens for them to eat that deal so they could sign Nazem Kadri. And if the Canadiens end up getting Nazem Kadri from Calgary, I mean, it's just like an infinite money glitch for the Montreal Canadiens. Like, it would be really funny to see that happen. He also grew up a Canadiens fan. So that's a guy who I think has reformed his game in a way that he's no longer like a liability to take a dumb, stupid penalty that would get him suspended in the playoffs. He's just a really effective, top six forward with legitimate offensive upside and an edge to his game that I think would really, really look good in a Montreal Canadiens uniform. So there's a couple: Matt Barzal, Nazem Kadri. Let's see what the Flames and the Islanders choose to do this summer. Again, it's really too soon to know what a lot of those teams are going to do. All right. I think we'll leave the mailbag there. Thanks so much for submitting those. We take those questions all week. So lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Keep sending those in. We will keep reviewing them and keep getting them out there as you guys send them to us. Let's do our trivia and then head out of here. Yesterday, in honor of the Canadiens and the Bruins facing off for the final time this year, one of the Canadiens and Bruins that I often think of is Michael Ryder. Broke my heart when he went to the Boston Bruins and won a cup with them in 2011. But Michael Ryder, I wanted to know who his first NHL goal was against. And Jason on YouTube had the correct answer. It was Ed Belfour, Eddie the Eagle. Jason also said he was there. He saw it. So congrats on that. Must have been a fun one. That's quite a goalie to get your first NHL goal on. It's like all of those guys who, for the last 15 years, got to say that they scored a first NHL goal on Carey Price because the Canadiens just always gave up a guy's first NHL goal. All right, today's question. That was the first regulation win for the Montreal Canadiens over the Boston Bruins since November 5th, 2019. In that game, November 5th, 2019, this former Habs defenseman scored 2 goals. I need to know the name of the player, the name of the defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens who scored twice in the last regulation win for the Montreal Canadiens over the Boston Bruins. If you have the answer, put it in the comments on YouTube. While you're down there, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. It feeds the YouTube algorithm. It lets them know that you like us. And if you like us, do those things. We really appreciate it. But if you get the answer right, we'll shout you out on the next episode of the show. And that's going to do it for us today on at Locked On Canadiens. A fantastic week for Montreal Canadiens. Thank you so much for tuning in and for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter, the local coverage you love from Locked On. With these playoff races going the way they are, that is a must listen. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're also available on Amazon Fire TV on your free Fire TV channels app. Click the Montreal Canadiens logo in the hockey section, and you can watch all of our episodes there as well. We're Locked On Canadiens everywhere that you can find social posts. TikTok, I'm trying to put up a little bit more content on there, especially directly after games or when there's news. So follow us on TikTok, Locked On Canadiens there, Locked On Canadiens on Instagram, Locked On Canadiens on Bluesky. Those are the places you can find us. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you on Monday.